Peace. Yeah. All right, today. This book is Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious by Carl Gustav Jung. This sucker was a whopper. 390 pages. And I got through the whole thing. Some parts I understood better than others. Obviously, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not going to school for psychology or anything. I'm a practicing electrician, an apprentice. But I've been to college before. I just believe, at my age, it's not proper for me to go back to college. It's not worth my time and the amount of debt that you receive from college. And I don't know, it's just not. So what I do is I am interested in psychology. Obviously, my channel is on Kundalini rising and spiritual stuff in general, how it ties together, and psychology is a big part of that. And this guy has brought light to a lot of my experiences, my visions, and the meanings. And where do they come from? And you guys be surprised. A lot of the stuff that you see that are ghosts and that are entities and visions, you think they're separate from you. No, they're from your collective unconscious. Yeah, so, alright. Let's get into it. Here's the back. I'm just going to read the bottom part of the back. The concept of our archetypes and the idea of a collective unconscious are two of Jung's most famous and exciting ideas. In this volume, taken from the collective works and appearing in paperback for the first time, Jung describes and elaborates upon these two central concepts of his psychology. Indeed, are essays on specific archetypes, a study of the process of individuation, and an account of mandala symbolism. The archetypes and the collective unconscious is profusely illustrated with many illustrations in full color. That it is. The best part was almost the end, when he went through all the mandalas and gave you the pictures separately. So I'm going to go through the index and kind of explain what I got from each section generally. I'm not going to try to get too much stuff because it's a long book. Some of the things I retained, some things I did not retain. But I am happy if I can get a few concepts out of any book and keep them, integrate them into my spiritual practice and daily life. So I don't have a photographic memory. Maybe some of you guys do. That's just dandy if you do. That's awesome. But I don't. So my memory is pretty good. But I try to go through these books kind of thoroughly because my appetite for learning since my Kundalini activation has been immense. The archetypes and the collective unconscious. Let's go through the index. And this is the basic pattern I'm going to use on each book review that I do. And then I'll try to tie it back into kind of, what did I learn? How did it tie back to Kundalini and spiritual practice? I'll try to do that. Certain sections, maybe I couldn't do that. I couldn't make that connection. But I do take a list of words that are unique to the book, like psychological words, psychology words that, that a lot of people do not use. And then I get their definitions. Chthonic, Psychopomp. Psychopomp is actually an interesting one. It's a spiritual guide to souls that guides you from when you die into the death realm. Any spirit or guide that guides you into death to your next phase is considered a psychopomp. I've heard the word before, but I didn't know it. Okay, here we go. First section basically goes over archetypes of the collective unconscious. It talks about what archetypes are. They're like, supposedly they are much alien than we can even describe. And like a lot of the archetypes that we have are just, they're like images that we can cognitively relate and know, but the actual archetypical image is always more alien. The subconscious. is something in our brain that we've left behind as animals. All animals live in their subconscious, their instinctual brain, such as a wolf, a bear, a bird. As humans, at some point, I figure maybe a few thousand years ago, we decided, or our brains developed differently, and then we started living in our conscious brain, and then that's generally when the ego developed. And then it was probably like a platform that was the arbiter between the subconscious and the conscious brain. Well, in the first section, he talks about archetypes of the collective unconscious. There are two main archetypes of a man and woman, and they're called the anima and the animus. The anima to a man is generally a red-haired woman. It is the perfect woman. It can come as different forms and in different ways. To a sailor, an anima can be hallucinated. Like, let's say sailors used to get like scurvy and other, they get dehydrated at sea, so they would hallucinate, and then their subconscious would project their anima onto a rock, and this rock would be a red-haired mermaid. So there you go. And generally, the anima to a man, if you see your anima in your dreams or in a vision, generally is a red-haired woman. It's usually a skinny, pretty, red-haired woman. It's a woman of your ideal. That's the twist you're going to get on it, but it comes from the collective unconscious. And as a woman, that same figure would be your ideal man, and it would be called the animus. And these two are collective archetypes. They're two different types of archetypes of the collective unconscious. And that's in the first section. It's the first 60 pages or so. And for a woman, it's called the animus, and it's your masculine ideal part. It's in your subconscious of who your ideal man would be. That's why sometimes women in marriage, or men, they have a hard time with their wife because they don't match up with this animus or anima. Maybe, there's many, they don't even know it consciously. It's hard to see into your subconscious. Sometimes psychotherapists will use hypnotism to bring it out, or they'll have you draw stuff you've seen in your dreams, because anything you see in your dreams is coming out of your subconscious. It's your subconscious trying to communicate with you through symbolisms, patterns, sacred geometry, animus, you name it. And it's trying to communicate with you, and sometimes it's really bizarre, and it's got many motifs, and it could be cluttered or confusing. That's how the subconscious is. It doesn't work like the conscious brain, and it's trying to let this stuff out, and mostly it's done during dreams. And you can also have a run-in with your subconscious, with the unconscious, or the collective unconscious. See, there's a collective unconscious, and then there's your personal unconscious. Those are two levels of the unconscious. Your personal conscious will have stuff, related to your life, but it's more tailored to what you're going through, and personally your emotion, and your personal experience. So, and it'll give you, stuff, dreams, vivid dreams, lucid dreams. It could even be astral travel, figures you see. But generally, I think if you get into astral traveling, you're getting into the collective unconscious by then. So, but dreams, generally, lucid dreams, could be out of your personal unconscious, and it could be from a collective unconscious. You could have figures that are collectively, they transcend all humans. That's what the collective unconscious is. It's an unconscious part of your brain that all humans share, and it's a set of symbols. It can be pyramids, dragons, fairies. It could be the mother archetype. It could be the child archetype. It could be the Syzygy archetype, which is another name. It's a complex, and I'll put it up on the video. I'll put the writing, what I just said there, how to spell that. And that's considered the divine couple, and that's another collective archetype. Sometimes people will see like two aliens in their dreams, and one will appear as a male and one will appear as a female. Well, that is an alien. And the reason why they look alien is because the collective unconscious is exactly that. It is very alien to our conscious brain. It is bizarre. It is more alien than you can comprehend. That's why these figures sometimes appear as aliens themselves. And that's where, UFOs, so on and so forth, coming from an archetype out of collective unconscious. That's why sometimes groups of people can see UFOs, because their collective unconscious is somehow linking up and they're having like a group rebirth, and it's spewing out, projecting out, and they're like, oh, look at all this, and then it disappears. It's like, how do these things disappear? It's because they're thoughts. I mean, they're coming out of the subconscious. So, okay, you got divine parents, you got child archetype, you got different types of the mother archetype. You got wizards, like I said, fairies. These are all collective archetypes of the unconscious. There are others. I'm missing them. Like I said, this is going to be my take on the book. And some of it's based off other experience and other readings I got. But, okay, anywho. Part 2, right around page 75, he goes into psychological aspects of the mother archetype. I had a hard time with this one. He goes on to talk about male, like what a son experienced from different mother archetypes. People sometimes too, they embody these archetypes, like their personality. They are like that type of mother archetype. There's different types of mother archetypes. There's weak ones, strong ones, whatever. And based off of that, children have different reactions to their mother. Daughters, sons, and it's different based off your gender. And that's all I want to say about the mother archetype. So, okay. Part 3 is right around page 115. He goes into rebirth. Now, rebirth, very interesting topic for me. And rebirth, there are different levels of rebirth. There are different styles of rebirth. And, depending on the rebirth, will depend on, what you get out of it. What kind of, do you get positive? How much positive outcome do you get from said rebirth? Okay, so as he explained, I've had a rebirth. I thought mine to be what is called a near-death experience, and literally I felt like I was reborn. And to me, those are the deepest. That is the deepest form of rebirth you can have. Is where you basically are dying. You come out of the body, you go in through a tunnel, and you come into. It can be a number of things, because the brain, the subconscious, the collective subconscious is bizarre. And you could end up into realms where there's fairies and all kinds of stuff. But the furthest way, deepest place you can go is to the light. You want to see the white light. And then if you get that rebirth, generally that type of rebirth will automatically activate Kundalini to the throat chakra. It's a Sushumna rising to the throat chakra. And it's a rebirth. It's a form of spiritual rebirth. Now, Jung goes on to talk about in these rebirths, there are different types. There are ceremonial rebirths, ritual rebirths. You can have a collective rebirth with a group of people, let's say at like a Grateful Dead concert. You got the Grateful Dead playing their music, they're noodling, going doo 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 over and over and over. Put you in a trance, you're in a group. It's like the mind connects up, the subconscious, and it brings you to like a place where you can connect up and interface with your subconscious. And you go through kind of like it moves you. It's like a mini rebirth. And then you got ceremonial ritual rebirths. You got the style which religions do, where you go up and like eat the bread of Christ, or you sing hymns with groups, and that's a form of rebirth too, according to Carl Jung. It's maybe not one that'll move you to like a Kundalini activation, but it does move you. It does push you along the path of spiritual growth, of individuation. And that's the whole goal, is to eventually reach a point where you're entering individuation. And individuation is a psychological term coined by, I'm pretty sure, Carl Jung. It's basically a spiritual awakening, is what I can see. I mean, you can be individuated and, you know, be a full personality, but still have work to do to gain the full enlightenment, you know, to where you're in pinnacle or plateau experience. But I think you reach individuation, the top of the individuation, when you go through that full rebirth and have the Kundalini activation. And then after that, it's Kundalini taking you all the way finally to the light, and that's beyond individuation, in my opinion. That's taking consciousness, because you've already merged. At that point, you've awakened the Kundalini, you've already integrated the subconscious, and that's what individuation is. It's lowering your consciousness down into the subconscious and realizing what it is, knowing it, and then bringing the consciousness back up, and then bringing them both together. And usually this is depicted to you in dreams, visions, through mandalas. You have visions of mandalas, usually like a spinning swastika, or they call it a quaternity. And when you see the quaternity, and the way it spins matters. If it's spinning to the right, your consciousness is receding back upward into a conscious state. Your brain is spinning upward, back out of the subconscious. If you see the mandala, and it could be any type of mandala with 4 parts and an axis. It could have a little hole in the middle. It could have different colors. It generally has like a dark and a white, lighter spot as indication of light and dark. But if the mandala is spinning left in your vision, that means you're receding down into the subconscious. Your consciousness is receding down into it, and it's sucking you in. Spinning right, it's receding up. And basically what this mandala is a quaternity. And at this point, if you get these visions, you're basically becoming individuated. You are integrating the subconscious with the conscious and becoming a whole human being. And when you see these things, you can get them with psychedelics. You can get them while meditating. You can get them in dreams, lucid dreams, visions, astral travel. And you're on the right path if you see these mandalas. And a lot of times they're in pure outer space. They're in the backdrop is black. And I've had this experience when I drank ayahuasca. And I come from the light and I come out through it, and it was spinning to the right, and I was rising upward. And then I could start hearing voices again from someone that was watching over me during the time, asking me if I was okay, because I wasn't responding for a while. And that's when I got back to the body, opened my eyes. I still couldn't see for a while, and I found out later through this book that what I seen was the quaternity of my soul, basically of my subconscious. And it had 4 blades on it, and they were rainbow colored, and they had like lines through them. I still today cannot draw it perfectly. I cannot. I know about what it is. It was like a bladed, like one of the pinwheel things that spin, but it had 4 things on it, and it was spinning to the right. I come up through the center of it, and I found out in this book what it was. It was the quaternity, and it represents the 4 quadrants. It represents wholeness. It is the earth, fire, air, and water. It's the combining of all 4 elements, your lower elements, and that's the subconscious, your lower. So it's going to be like heart down. And then once you can get that integrated, then you can rise up the higher chakras and into enlightenment, the higher consciousness of the conscious brain. But if you don't even get into the individuation process itself, you don't have none of this activated. You could be conscious and you could be doing things and working, but you haven't even started to build the lower foundation of your lower chakras of the subconscious to integrate, to rise back up consciously back into the light. That's what you gotta do. So, okay, there is one more thing on rebirth. There are ceremonial rebirths, and then I want to go back over dying rebirths. So ceremonial rebirths, like what they put a Freemason through, or an initiation into a mystical school, where they bring you in, blindfolded, and they read all this stuff. They're trying to move you, and then kind of ignite you into this process of individuation or spiritual awakening, and that is considered like a ceremonial rebirth. It's like a mini rebirth, and to me, it's still not as powerful as the near-death experience. The near-death experience is the creme of the creme. But the problem is that near-death experience is you could die. Then you don't get nothing. I mean, you might get something. I don't know what you get after it. You might go into the light anyways, but you'll be dead. You can't do nothing with it. So you don't want that. At least not in my opinion. You want to be able to do something good with the spiritual awakening. You want to change people for the better. Get them on the path, maybe. Some of them, before you kick her. So there are ways through initiation, through church ceremonies, or church rituals, group hallucinations at concerts. They're all considered forms of rebirth. Different levels, different strengths. They do, certain ones move you more. And then you also have another form. It's called Shaktipat, I guess. I kind of left it out, and he briefly discusses this. It's kind of like an initiation or a form of rebirth from a master to a disciple. And sometimes that can cause a pretty major rebirth, either right when they touch your head or your third eye. There's ways that different gurus and masters initiate, or in certain mystical schools they got other ways. They can do it through like sayings, words, humming. The master, that is, they can transmit their Kundalini onto you. But to me, you're still not yourself activating this process of individuation, of rebirth yourself. And the only way to do that, well, I mean, it can happen through stresses and that, but this is getting off what Carl Jung's talking about, but it's through near-death experience. And that can be done through ayahuasca, possibly MeO-DMT, DMT, but ayahuasca seems to be the one that activates Kundalini. If you do research on it, for some reason the duration of it makes a difference. And how far are you into that near-death experience, how many minutes you're into it, if you've reached total amnesia, of the self, of the human body and all that. It's very important in my experience. After the rebirth, he goes into the core, psychological aspects of the core. And basically the core, this is the psychology of a woman. It doesn't have anything to do with men. It's basically like an archetype, or an aspect of a woman's subconscious, that collective archetype that's considered the old maiden, or like the sacrificial woman, or the victim woman, I would have to say. So, and that's all I want to say about that. So I had a hard time getting the core down. The core, the old maiden is used a lot of times at fairy tales, so on and so forth. So this is a whole nother section. It's called the feminology of spirit in fairy tales. He goes on to talk about the trickster figure. Like, what are some of the different motifs in fairy tales? What are some of the symbolisms, the numbers, the ratios of numbers they use, and so on and so forth. The trickster figure, I just want to say about that generally that can be a number of things. They call it the Mercurial or the Mercurious figure, or it could even be Satan or Lucifer, or it could be like a dragon or a serpent, or it could even be like an elf, like that's screwing with you or whatever. It could be also the Leviathan, or they say slay the Leviathan, slay the trickster. That's your lowest. It could be a dragon. I think I already said that. Dragon. There's a form of a 5-headed trickster right here. And generally, these tricksters do not like it when you have defeated or integrated your lower conscious. And they're usually, when they are unrecognized, is when they are most powerful. When you do not recognize your subconscious and give credence, that's when it's most powerful. So, trickster figure. It's always one. I think a lot of people have trouble with that. When they feel like every time they get into something's screwing with them. They don't know what. They need to recognize, to subdue the subconscious, to make sure there's not bad blowback or negative effects from the subconscious. You need to realize when the subconscious is projecting into your reality, when it's manifesting itself into your reality, whether it's in your dreams or your everyday life or in the visions. You need to recognize that's what it is. Once you recognize this, you've taken all its power away and make it satisfied. And this subconscious can feel like a separate entity to you. It can feel like many separate entities. You need to realize that's what it is. And the problem with schizophrenia is these people do not realize this. They're overwhelmed by these figures in their daily lives. They don't realize that it's their own subconscious, whether it's their personal or the collective. You need to realize this. Realizing that these are projections of your collective unconscious or your personal unconscious takes the power away, takes the edge off the sword, and it allows the process of individuation to start occurring. Some people don't even have, any aspects, or any experiences of their subconscious, really. They suppress it so well, and generally that is a recipe for disaster. Okay, so the trickster figure, you know who he is, I told you. And there could be more of those figures considered trickster. That's a big archetype right there. That's a big one, trickster. And it's always talked about in fairy tales. The trickster is one of the main bad guys. It's not always, but mostly is. Okay. Conscious, unconscious individuation is another part. I'm getting to about page 275 on this, as it's shown in the index. This is going into what I've already talked about a lot. I mean, I rambled on earlier. The conscious, unconscious, in the process of individuation. The reason why the three are together is because when you start merging and you start realizing and giving credence to your unconscious, it starts, integrating into the conscious brain. And you almost become like a being, like what the Hindus call, or the yogis call a jiva. You're like the jiva, the watcher, and you've got a foot each, the light and the dark being the unconscious, and the light being your conscious brain. I mean, you're equally footed. They're integrated. A person that is equally footed, they're considered whole. And those people generally must have gone through some type of spiritual Kundalini awakening. I mean, maybe they haven't fully raised it, but they've got it pretty advanced at that point. They got it somewhere heart level or higher, in my opinion. I don't know for sure, but that's just my feeling on that. So, individuation, like I said, is the process of bringing consciousness and unconscious together. Page 290, he gets into the study of the process of individuation. He starts showing like pictures, really cool pictures of patients that he had throughout the years, and that he procured from universities of patients and other doctors' patients. He started collecting different mandalas, or even paintings. And you'd be surprised how a lot of paintings are set up like mandalas, whether they're Hindu yantras. It's like a square circle, and then up and a below, and a light and a dark, and a center, and then like 4 parts, which is the Quaternity. Or maybe they're the Trinity, but the Trinity is also an aspect of the Quaternity, because the Trinity is 3 plus 1, which equals 4. The Trinity is the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and together they are a whole, which is the 1. So you got the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, the whole, that's 3 plus 1 equals 4. So the Trinity is the Quaternity. Yes. So 3 in any fairy tale setting, like a horse with 3 legs, it is in the process of becoming whole and becoming the Quaternity, becoming the 4, which is the whole. Quaternity is the whole part. Trinity is, but until it becomes together and becomes a whole, it's not 4. So 3 is 4, but not until it comes together. Get it? So, all right, that's the Trinity and Quaternity, and that is talked about a lot throughout the whole book. He brings that topic up a lot. And so what he does in the process of individuation, he goes through each patient's different drawings, and most of them are mandalas, and he describes the different aspects and kind of where they are in the process of individuation. And it's a pretty cool section. It kind of gives you a look at how to kind of go through, do some of the psychoanalysis, I guess, that he does. Type that he does. I don't know about psychologists nowadays. I mean, I'm not in the business of psychoanalysis, trying to figure out people. I can kind of just look at someone and know kind of what they're feeling or where they're at spiritually. Some people are a little harder to read, but most people I can see right through them. And that's a quality that I've gained after my Kundalini activation in 2012. I can look in someone's eyes and read them pretty good. I mean, I can't read minds. I mean, I think that's silly. And if you're reading minds, you're going to have all kinds of trouble, because all you're going to hear is chatter. You're going to hear words and fragments. You're going to get chatter from the subconscious. You ain't going to be able to make heads or tails of it. People saying they can read minds are full of shit, in my opinion. And if they are not full of shit, they are going to be... It's like getting in like a scattered radio station between two radio stations. You're hearing two different guys talking, and you're hearing chatter, and you're hearing crackling. No good. What you want to do is be able to read their emotions and their feelings. And from there, you can get a better understanding of what they are thinking. And you can deduce from that what they are thinking from that. You don't need to know exactly word for word what they are thinking. Because even the mind itself is a tricky thing, and it can lie. It can lie to you. It can lie to other people. So you may not be getting an accurate reading. Now, when you know what someone is, what emotions have bubbled up into feelings out of the subconscious. The emotions are out of the subconscious, and then they bubble up into the consciousness, and they become feelings. So when you can kind of get a gauge at the emotion and the feeling, and out of a person, and look at them, and then you kind of get it when they look at you. You know what they feel about you, right there, and so on and so forth. You're getting more of an accurate gauge, because it's something they feel deep, in their being, on both halves of their brain. So, all right, the process of individuation, yeah. And then a lot of these people, they procured their mandalas, a lot of times you get these visions or these really lucid dreams during the process of individuation. And you feel compelled to draw them. You may draw them weeks later. You might do them the next morning. You might roll out of bed. I gotta draw this thing. This I seen. It was so real. It was like I was there. Or you might even get it like if you smoke DMT. I gotta draw these patterns I seen. This mandala, and it ends up being almost every time a mandala of some sort. That's what you want. I mean the mandala is a representation of your personality, basically. If you're seeing it as a whole, that's good. And some people, they do get these mandalas, though, that are kind of, they're really scattered, and they got really kind of like bad vibes and drawn in them. They're in the earlier stages of individuation. They still got things to figure out, things to integrate. And they become more clear, and then you can see the quaternity better, and you can see better representations of good, at the top with the types of animals or deities they draw, and you can see that they're further along in the process of individuation, according to Carl Jung. So, and then the last section starts around 355 and goes all the way to 390, is mandala symbolism. And, basically the last part of the book is all different mandalas and what their symbolism is. Some of these, the earlier ones were patient ones, and then the latter ones, he just goes in and describes what it's saying. Like you can see here, you can see a swooshing. It's indicating a rotation to a certain way. And a lot of them have that rotation. Not all of them, but... And then a lot of them too have that lightness, darkness, and that the lightness is always consciousness and the darkness is always unconscious. So you get a lot of these same motifs across, and it don't matter who it is. And that is the whole point of the book. I'm going to tie this sucker up right now. And the whole point of the book is that no matter who you are, these mandalas look almost the same from person to person. And what he is saying is that he did not put these ideas in his head, because he didn't even come to these conclusions himself till many years later, that of the collective unconscious, that we share this unconscious. And what he found out is people are drawing the same figures. They're drawing the same motifs, the same symbolism in these mandalas, which means it's coming out of a part of the brain that we share. Because how else could they all look the same? There's no way. Not by chance. No way. No way. So we share as a species, possibly as all living things, especially as a species, a collective unconscious. We have our own personal, and deep, deep, deep down, we have a collective unconscious. And in my opinion, final thing I'll say is, that's how we know that even if there wasn't ship travel, how could they have pyramids on different continents that were built right around the same time? The pyramid is a symbol of the collective unconscious. So is the eyeball. The all-seeing eye, that's another symbol. It's not an archetype, but it's a symbol. It's like a subset symbol. And these things come out of your collective unconscious. You get all spiritual as like the Incas or as the Egyptians. You're like, as a group of people, they get all collectively spiritual, maybe go through a collective rebirth, and they're like, man, let's just start building these damn these pyramid shapes, because they're spiritual, unconscious, collective symbolism. And it's the same thing with mandalas, the same thing with archetypes, whether it's the trickster figure, the child, the divine couple, so on and so forth. So there you have it, Archetypes of the Collective Unconscious, Carl Gustav Jung. And I'll try to do these book reviews, probably one every 5 or 6 videos. I hope you like it. And we're in turbulent times. Please stay safe. Remember, we're all brothers and sisters. I love you. Thank you.
Where's Rocky?